Hilchis Matnos Aniyim yesh bechlolon shleish esri mitzvahs. Sheva mitzvahs asay, v'sheish mitzvahs leisaseh, v'zeu proton. Aleph lo haniach peah, Beis sheli yechal leisa. Now the Seder's of the Rambam usually that when there's an essa and a leisa, the same thing, you're being makayim an essa by doing it, and you're not being over a leisa by doing it. So there was always be mentioned the essa and then the leisa. Marshal by Shabbos, there was lishbeis on Shabbos, and then sheli lasis malacha. Al derez ben yontiv. By yontiv was also a din. You should be shavis on yontiv and sheli lasis by malacha. So over here also the essa is lahaniach peah, and then it doesn't start with the lav. It starts with the essa lahaniach peah, and then there's a lav shlei yechal leisa, and there's a gimel lahaniach leket, and dalet shlei yelaket haleket. Hey laziv oilu leisakerem, and vav shlei elu lakerem. You shouldn't gather the oilu leisakerem. Oilu leisakerem is grapes that are underdeveloped, that are not regular clusters of grapes. So we'll learn more beprotia. So, but the idea is that we're dealing with grapes that are very loosely, normally a cluster of grapes grows thickly, or this grows very, very sparsely. And so it's laziv elu sakerem and vav shlei elu lakerem. Zayin laziv peret hakerem and ches shlei laket peret hakerem. Now, peret hakerem is be'emes, peret to the kerem is like leket is to a sada. Leket means the stalks that fall down while you're cutting it. Now that is a peret hakerem, means the grapes that fall down while you're cutting off the grapes. So it would seem that it would be more pashtusdik that behemshech to yelaket haleket and laziv yelaket haleket, there should be the din of peret hakerem. The Peel, the Seder Advarim is not like that. The Seder first he mentions leket, and then he mentions oilulis hakerem, and then he mentions peret hakerem. I'll call upon him. So Zayin is lazi peret hakerem, and Ches shlei laket peret hakerem. And Tes lahaniach shikha, and Yud shlei yoshu lekachas hashikha. Yud Aleph lahafrish ma'isa la'aniyim, and Yud Beis litin tzedakah k'misas yad, and Yud Gimel is shlei ya'amitz levavi al hu'aniyim. So it's also litin tzedakah k'misas yad is the Esa, and Yud Gimel shlei ya'amitz levavi al hu'aniyim. Ubir mitzvaseilu beprokamelu peirik rishon. In these 13 mitzvahs that were mentioned, 10 of the mitzvahs were mitzvahs basoda. In the 10 mitzvahs, so there's 5 groups. There's 5 groups of an es and a lesis. A pei has an es and a lesis. Leket has an es and a lesis. Elulis have an es and a lesis. Now there is a peret, and now there is a shikha. They each one have an es and a lesis. So the first 10, that's what's going to be discussed here in Perek Aleph. The first 10, which are basoda, which each one has an es and a lesis. Perek Rishon. Haketzer sodeu le yiktzer es kol hasoda kula el yaniach ma'at kamel aniyim b'seif hasoda. So the Seder Advarim is you're not supposed to cut the entire field. You're supposed to leave part of the field uncut. Shenema leichal sechala pa'as sotcha bikutzrecha. While you're cutting the field, don't completely destroy the edge of the field. Leave over part of the field. Echad HaKetzer, though it says Ketzer is normally with a keli. Toilish is biyad. So the Lashon is bikutzrecha. So we learn out Echad HaKetzer v'Echad HaTeilish. V'zeh Shamaniach, when he leaves over, he doesn't cut the entire field. He leaves over part of the field. So v'zeh Shamaniach hu anikropeya. That's called the edge. There's the edge of the field which was left over. Le'sachala pa'as sotcha bikutzrecha. Kshem shemaniach b'soda, the lashon is pas sodcha, but we also learn out that it's lav dafka soda kach bi'ilonis, which means she'oiset perisayim, you're gathering the pears of a tree, is also maniach ma'at la'aniyim, you leave over part of the tree for the aniyim. Now, over v'kotzer is kol hasoda, we went ahead and you were over, and you weren't mekayim, this din of le'sachala pas sodcha b'kutzrecha, you were over on this lav, over v'kotzer is kol hasoda. A asav is called Peirus Ilan, which by Ilan there's also a din that you're not allowed to cut the entire Ilan, you have to leave part of the Ilan. Is likeach ma'at mimasha kotzer mimasha asav v'noisner la'aniyim shenisinosi mitzvahs asay shenamer la'oni v'lager tazivesam. So you could still be mekayim the mitzvahs asay. Because when you don't cut it, when even though the Ram doesn't write this, but it's poshet that when you're mekayim the lav of l'sachala pas sotcha b'kutzrecha, you also mekayim the mitzvah asay. Like we said, that the Rambam first said the mitzvah asay lo niach peya, and then he said sheli yechala esa. So when a person is not over on the lav, so he's also mekayim the mitzvah asay. But the chiddush over here is that even though he was over on the lav, he was taking mechala pas sotcha b'kutzrecha, but nevertheless now when he's going to go and take this produce that he cut already, and now he's going to give it to the yoni. So that's also going to be kind mitzvah asay. Shninosi mitzvah asay. Shnema la'ani v'lager tazivesim. And we learn out that he could still do that even after he was already over on lisachal pasotcha b'kutzrecha. Va'afilu tochen hakama v'loshe v'ofi pas. So there would be a svara that he was kaina b'shini because shini is kaina. But nevertheless, we learn out from a special limud that even if he was mishane, he still owned this. Still belongs to the aniyim. The marshal, if something would have been destroyed, as we'll soon learn, if the entire produce would be destroyed, there would be no chiyuv to give to the aniyim, because it's mam and she'en li tevim. The question is if it still belongs to the aniyim. In other words, even after you already were loshe and tochne, you made a shinui in this produce. That's the chiddush. There's even though vafilu tochen hakama v'loshe v'ofi pas, so we don't say you were koinit and now there was a shini kaina, so memela now there's no chiyuv to give it to the aniyim. No, it is a nation mimenu peil aniyim. This produce still belongs. That's what we learn out from Lo'ani v'lager tazavesom, that this produce, even after you made a shini, still belongs to the aniyim, and memela you have to leave it for the aniyim. And since you leave it for the aniyim, so memela you are mekayim the mitzvah sasei. You are mekayim the mitzvah sasei. There's an issue. What happens if you leave it for the aniyim, and lepel the aniyim never got it? In other words, to be mekayim the mitzvah sasei after you were able the leisasa, are you only mekayim the mitzvah sasei if you leave it to the aniyim and the aniyim actually got it? Or what happens if you'll take it out and you'll leave it for the aniyim, but lepel the aniyim never got it? So lepel you have to leave it for the aniyim in a way that the aniyim could take it themselves, because we'll soon learn legabi pay. You don't have tevis anoy. It's not really yours to give; it's for them to take. But on the other hand, in order for you to be mekayim the mitzvah sasei of laniach peya after you were able the lav, so it should be a lav anitik lasei, and memela you shouldn't get malchus. Some learn that it's only if you actually saw to it that the aniyim got it. Anyways, I'll quote upon him. The Ram says because lashon haram is lekeach ma'at mashakatzer v'noisnoi laniyim. You have to give it to the aniyim. What do you mean? You have to give it to the aniyim. The aniyim take it. It means that you have to see to it that the aniyim should get it, or else you weren't really mekayim the mitzvah sasei. Anyways. Vafilu tochen hakama v'loshe v'ofi pas is a reza nesim imenu peil aniyim. Ovat kol hakotzer shekotzer ein nisraf kedem shnosen hapeya. So in other words, the produce which you already cut, in other words, you were able to lav on lisachala pasotcha b'kutzrecha, and now that produce is no longer around because it was lost, it was burnt, even though it wasn't your fault. Is hareza leika shari over al mitzvah leisasa ve'eni yochel lekayim esa shabo. You're no longer in the position to be able to be kind of mitzvahs asay. That's machlekes. Because the machlekes is when you have a lav anitik lasay, is the pshat that through being over the lav you bemis chayiv malchus. It's just that you have the opportunity to do the yesa. So if you do the yesa, so that takes away the malchus, and if you don't do the yesa, you still have the malchus for the lav. Even though the reason why you're not doing the yesa is ba'inus. Abulapel, since you were over on the lav, so you chayiv malchus for the lav. It's just that you would have an opportunity to do the yesa, and that would take away the lava. But if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. Other name, you have to be over on the yesa. In other words, if l'mashal you didn't do the yesa ba'inus, so then you wouldn't get malchus. The Rambam paskins that you really get malchus for the lav. It's just that you have the opportunity to do the yesa to take away the lav. And if lepel you didn't do the yesa because you were even if an oinus, but lepel, so you get malchus for the lav. That's the shittas Rambam. Halacha dalet. So that was peya. So peya there's a lav. Not to be l'schala pasotcha b'kutzrecha. There's an essa to leave peya, and you can be mekayim the essa even after you were over the lav. But if you can't be mekayim the essa, then you get malchus. V'chein b'leka, the same thing. K'shekoitzer uma'alim, when you're cutting it and you're making it into bundles, and the emes is brought down that even if you're not making it into bundles, you're just cutting it. Is lei yelaket hashibolim hanoiflis b'shas hakotzer. So those the stalks that fall while you're cutting it, which we'll learn more pratim about it, you shouldn't gather them. That's elayanichem lanim. You should leave those stalks that fell down while you were cutting those shibelas that fell down while you were cutting it, you should leave it aniyim. Shenema v'leket k'tzircha leis laket. Don't gather the leket of your cutting. Those that fell down that you want to gather, don't gather them. Over v'likta, if you were aver and you were malaket, is afilu tochan v'afa, is nesen l'aniyim. Shenema l'ani v'lager tazevesem. So this limud of l'ani v'lager tazevesem teaches us you mekayim the mitzvahs asay even after you were aver on the lav. However, of the nisrifu achar shaliktam, kedem shnosen l'aniyim is again is later because you were aver on the lav. And since you were aver on the lav, so memela and you're not mekayim the eser, even if not mekayim the eser b'oinus, but nevertheless you chayev malchus for the lav. V'chein beperet shenifrat min ha'anovim b'shas ha'psira. By peret is the same thing. Peret by anovim is the same thing like leket legabi shibolim, is the grapes that fall down while you're cutting. V'chein ba'oilelis. Oilelis means underdeveloped grapes, which are very, they're thin grapes and they're not like clusters, like we'll learn the protein. So they also go into the gather of Matnos Aniyim. Shnamar, v'karmecha leisa elu. Don't take away the oilelis. Uperet karmecha leisa lakit. La'ani v'lager tazevesim. So again, there's a lav of leisa elu and there's an essa of la'ani v'lager tazevesim. V'chein ha'ma'amer, someone that was gathering the bundles in the field, v'shachach aluma achas besada, is again his areza leis ikachena. Shenama v'shachach te'emer basada leis soshev lekachta. You shouldn't take these oimrim. Avar v'likte, if you did take him, afilu tochnei v'ofei, is areza neisn l'aniyim. Shenama la'ani lager la'yosim v'lamoni yiyah. And zu mitzvah saseh. Is holamadata shekula mitzvahs leisaseh hanitek la'asehim. All of them are a leisaseh which are nitek la'aseh, which knows they're connected to the aseh. V'im leikiyim eseh shebem leike. So if you were mekayim the eseh, you don't get malchus. Masha'enkin, if you weren't mekayim the eseh, you get malchus. So all these are the 5 dinim. That says we talk about leket, and we talk about shikha, and we talked about peah, and elules and peret. So all these five matnas aniyim, there's a leisaseh and an essa. And as we said, so even though the Rambam writes it, there's a lav and there's only an essa to be mekayim the lav, but over here the amas you mekayim the essa also if you were never even on the lav. It's the pashtus advarim. It's not like leisigzel. There's a mitzvah of leisigzel and beishav is like zela. So you can only be mekayim beishav is like zela if you're even on leisigzel. If you weren't even on leisigzel, you're not mekayim beishav is like zela. Over here it's not like that. Halacha Vov. Kshem shashikha b'amorim, just like there's musik of shikha in bundles, is kachi bakoma. Im shochach mixas hakoma v'lei kotzra, is harei zulaniyim. Kshem shashikha b'tvuo ki yetzebo, just like there's a musik of shikha by tvuo, kachi et shikha leilonis kulam. Shenamar ki sachpid zeischa leisefayr achrecha. So the limud that we learn out is from the pasuk ki sachpid zeischa leisefayr achrecha. Which be'emes this pasuk Yisach b'zeisa l'sefayr achrecha teaches us. The Gemara says in Chulin teaches us the din of a peah by Yolanis. The Rambam didn't bring it. There's a din of peah by Yolanis that we'll also learn out from this pasuk, and then from the word achrecha we learn out that also oimer, that I'm also shikha, I'll call upon him. So the Rambam is saying there's a din of shikha by tvuah, and al there's a shikha by Yolanis, and not all Yolanis. Shikha l'Yolanis kulan. And even though it's speaking about Zaysim, is V'wadim L'Shari Lonis. Halacha Zayin, Nimtzah Salomit, Sha'arba Matonis Laniyim B'Kerem. A Kerem has four matonis. HaPeret, V'ha'Eilules, V'ha'Peah V'ha'Shikha. So there's Eilules is something which is only in a Kerem. So that's why there's 4, because there's an extra one called Eilules. V'shalish matanas b'tvuah haleket v'ashikha v'apeya, because peret in the kerem and leket in a soder is the same idea, but leket and peret is only in a soder or in a kerem. By Ilonis we don't find a musik called leket, and certainly there's no musik called elilis. By a sod in an ilon we only have peya and shikha. Mushtayim b'ilonis has shikha v'apeya. So there's nochamal. A kerem has all 4. He has peret, elules, peah, and shikha. A soda has the 3 of those 4. He doesn't have elules, so he has leket, shikha, and peah. And the Ilonis have Shikchon Peah. There's no Musik called Leket. Halacha Ches. Kol Matnos Aniyim Elu, Ein Behem Atevas Hanoya Lebaylim. Because the Bailim don't decide who gets it. Like it would be, let's say, by Meiser Ani or by Trumas or Meisers. El Aniyim Boim, V'neitel Neisen Al Korchen Shal Bailim. It doesn't belong to the Balabas at all. The Balabas has to leave it, and the Aniyim come and take it. Afilu Ani should be Yisrael, Mitzian Eisen Miyadi. Even if the owner of the Sodar is an Ani, but nevertheless, there's a din that the Ani is supposed to leave Peah, he's supposed to leave the Matnos Aniyim, and those Matnos Aniyim go to other Aniyim, doesn't go to the Bal HaSodar. That's the din. Afilu Ani should be Yisrael is Mitzian Eisen Miyadi, and it goes to whoever takes it. Halacha Tes. Kol Ger Ha'omur b'Matnos Aniyim, where it says like La'ani v'Lager Taziv Esav, so Einei Ela Ger Tzedek. What it really means by the word Ger, so the word Ger sometimes means a Ger Teshav, a Goy which is a Ger Teshav. And there's a Muslim called a Ger which is called a Ger Tzedek. So the Ger which says by Matnos Aniyim refers to a Ger Tzedek. Why? Shari U'emer b'Mais, it says here b'Maiser Sheni, but it's really be b'Maiser Ani. Shari U'emer b'Maiser Ani u'bo halevi v'ager. So we learn out Mahalevi ben Bris is Afager, which is talking about over here, is also ben Bris. That's been again Meiser Ani. So Mamela al derev zeh all Matnos Aniyim. All Matnos Aniyim, really the Torah, when the Torah is saying Lo Ani v'Lager Taziv Esam, it means an Ani, it means a Ger which is a Ger Tzedek. Of Avol became, even though Be'etzim the din is that it goes for a Ger Tzedek, of Avol became a Moinin Ani Yakum Matnos Elu. If Ani Yakum come and want to take the Matnos Aniyim, these Matnos Aniyim which are in the Soda, Ein Meinim Ani Yakum Matnos Elu, Elaboyin Bechlal Ani Yisrael V'Neitin Neisam Mipnei Darkei Shalom. So Me'ikra the dinner really belongs only to Ani Yisrael. But on the other end, Ein Meinim Ani Yakum Mitzad Darkei Shalom. Halacha Yud. Nemar b'Matnos Aniyim Lo'oni V'Lager Taziv Esam. So there's no Chiyuv Nesina. There's a din you have to leave it for the Ani and the Ger. So we learn now Kol Zman Shanim Tevin Eson. So then there's a Chiyuv Lo'oni V'Lager Taziv Esam. However, Posku Aniyim Levakesh Lechazar Achreim, if they're not really interested, they're no longer interested in it. Posku Aniyim Levakesh Lechazar Aleim. So then is Arei Anishim Mem Muter Lecholad. She'ein Gufi Kodesh Ketrumis. There's no chiyuv. There's no kedush zaguf in Matnos Aniyim. So mele anyone could use it, and also ve'eni chayiv little lehem d'meim. There's no chiyuv to give to replace the Matnos Aniyim which weren't taken by the Aniyim with money. Shleinema behem v'nosim l'aniyim ela taziv esim. Ve'eni mitzuva laziv esim l'chayu le'efes ela l'aniyim v'arein aniyim. So nachamal. So there's a chiyuv l'ani v'lager taziv esim. There's no chiyuv of nesina. They don't have a din of kedusha, and the chiyuv of taziv esim means taziv esim l'aniyim. So as long as the aniyim are interested in it, so there's the chiyuv of laziv esim l'aniyim. But once the aniyim are no longer interested in them, once we establish that the aniyim are no longer interested in them, so then there's no chiyuv of laziv esim, and mele anyone could take it. From Lashon Rambam is mashma that the fact that you're allowed to take it after the aniyim are not being teveyed, are not interested in anymore, is a special limud. Since it says taziv esim, there's no chiyuv nesina on one hand. So knows by Matnas Kohuna, there's a chiyuv nesina, you have to give it. So mainly you have to take a look for the kohen, and also it has kedusha, so you have to look for the kohen. Mashenken over here, there's no chiyuv nesina, there's only an union of taziv esim, and there's a din of taziv esim v'lei lechayis or the behemis. So mainly, so once they're not interested, you don't have to look for it. You don't have to look for them, and you could, and anyone could take it, and anyone could take it. In Gemara in Bab Metzia, it looks like it's mitzad hilchas yiyush. You know, since they were miyayish, just like everyone's miyayish from something they own, so someone else could take it. A person's miyayish from an aveda. So al derev's over here. The aniyim were miyayish. They're miyayish, so therefore everyone could take it. So the Rambam brings from the Dvar of Ram that it's taka two dinim. Whereas if not for this limud that we're learning from Taziv Esim, there would be a chiyuv nesina. So even though they're miyayish, there's a chiyuv nesina of Matnos Aniyim. But now that there's no chiyuv nesina, but you could still think that l'chura safkal, so since it became theirs at the point in time when he left the Matnos Aniyim, so l'chura it's theirs. Einochinami, there's no chiyuv nesina. But l'chpeil, how could you take it? L'chura it belongs to the Aniyim. So on that you need the din of Yush. Now there's two dinim. There's one din mitzad Yush, mitzad Hilchas Mominus, mitzad Hilchas Chesh Mishpat. There's Yush, and mitzad Hilchas Yeridea will say there's a din that there's no chiyuv of Taziv Esav. Halacha Yud Aleph. So the rule is that once the Aniyim are not Tivei Oisam, so then there's no chiyuv, anyone could take it. It doesn't have to be taken dafka by the Aniyim. Now, at what point in time do we say that the leket is no longer, the Aniyim are Toiven Oisam, and therefore Kolodem Mutarim Beleket? That's Mishikonsu Hamalaktim Shniyim, V'yilketu Acha Malaktim L'Rishenu V'yetzu. The Malaktim Rishenu went in already. Now the second Malaktim went in, and they already checked the second time. The Lekuti Basu Lekuti, like the Gemara says, and then once they went in as well, so then the Aniyim already are not interested. They're not interested, and therefore Kol Adam Mutar Beleket. Me'em Masayim Mutarim Kol Adam Beperet Ube'elilis. So over here, you don't have to come for a second set, because Lepel and Novim are more choshev, so more people come, and therefore Mishaholchu Haniyim Bekerem and V'Yoveyu, and they came back, and as they walked through the kerem and they walked back, so then as Anisher Acher came Mutar L'Chalodim. Once the Aniyim walked into the kerem, they walked back through the kerem, so then everyone is mutar in anything that's left in this kerem, which would have been originally Matnos Aniyim. Me'ei Masai Mutarim Kolodim B'Shikha Shel Zeisim Be'eretz Yisrael. So that's Im Shachach Eisam B'Reish HaZayis. Depends where the Shikha is. Im Shachach Eisam, we said the Shikha could be either Shikha of stuff that was gathered or it's still on the tree. So Im Shachach Eisam B'Reish HaZayis is Areza Mutar Ba Mirish Chedesh Kislev. Shehu Zman Reviya Shniya B'Shana Afila. This is the time of the second set of rains, when the rains are late. That's how the Rambam learns Pshat in the Gemara, that from Rish Chedesh Kislev onwards, that's when what's left on the Zayis is Mutar L'Cholodim. That's talking about the Zayis which are attached. Aval Tzipuri Zaysim, Sheshochan Tachas Ilam, you already cut the Zaysim, you harvested the Zaysim. And now you have a gathering of Zaysim under the Ilan, and you forgot them. And the question, so it's a din of Shikha. But on the other hand, from when is Kolodem Mutar in that Shikha? Is Harezim Mutar Behem, Mishayifsuko Aniyim L'Chazachre. Over here you have to already be boidik to see when the Aniyim stopped looking for the Zaysim. At that point in time, that's when Kolodem Mutar B'Zaysim. But that has nothing to do with the time of Rish Chedesh Kislev. Now, Halacha Yud Beis, Kol Zman, Sheyesh Lo'ani Little, Shikhas HaZaysim, HaMunachas Ba'aretz Tachas Ilonis, as long as the ani knows, if there is zaysim under the ilanis, and the ani could still go and take those zaysim, because those zaysim are still being looked for, is noitel. And the Mefarshim, the Radvaz teaches that it means noitel even what's on the tree. Although he said before that what's on the tree, once it comes Rish Chedesh Kislev, Kol Adam Mutarim, that's only talking about a tree which doesn't have a tzibur of zaysim under it. But if it's a tree that has a pile of zaysim under it, and that pile of zaysim has a din of shikha, and people are still looking for it, so Kol Zman Sheyesh La'ani Little Shikhas HaZaysim HaMunachas Boris Tachas Ilonis is natal. He's also the natal what's on top of the tree. V'afal Pisha Kvar Huter Kolodem B'Shikha Shebreisha Ilon. Normally people are mutter b'Shikha Shebreisha Ilon, but nevertheless over here in this Ilon, it still belongs to the ani, because the ani still has something which he's looking for under the tree, which is not really the glata pshat in the way you read the Rambam, but that's how the Radvaz teaches. The Radvaz teaches and Pri Chodesh teaches. Nachamol Kol Zman Sheyesh Lo Ani Little Shikhas HaZaysim HaMunachas Boretz Tachas Ilonis is natal, and he's also natal those shikha which is on top of the tree. V'afal Pisha Kvar Huter Kolodem B'Shikha Shebreisha Ilon. V'chol Zman Sheyesh Lo Little Shikha B'Reisha Ilon. The time that is natal, the shikha shebreisha ilan natal. V'afal pi she'en l'shikha tachtov. And those until Rish Chedesh Kislev, even though there's ein l'shikha tachtov, so he still takes ma shebreisha ilan. Ma she'en kein, if he has shikha tachtov, so he'll be able to take ma shebreisha ilan even after Rish Chedesh Kislev. Halacha Yud Gimel. Matnos Aniyim shebesoda she'en hu aniyim makpidim aleim. You can have a mitzvah of a field which has inferior fruit, a very small field, things that aniyim are not really interested in getting involved in. So over there, the Matnos Aniyim belonged to the Balasod. The Balasod could take it. Because since the Aniyim, again, because the din is that when the Aniyim are not interested, so Aniyim are not toivim eisam, so then there's no chiyuv. Lo ani will ager tazev eisam, only if the ani in the ger is interested in it. Halacha Yudal. Kol Matnos Aniyim o elu, eino neges min atera elu beretz Yisrael. Ki trumas u'maisas. Arei yakosev eimel bekutzrechem, it's ksir artzachem, so we learn out artzachem in Eretz Yisrael. Or Ktsir Chabasoda, which is talking about the Ktsir Chabasoda is Dafka in Eretz Yisrael. Or Kvar Nesparish B'Gemara, Sha'peya Neheges B'chutzlos Midevreim. So the Rambam says, Tamas Peya Neheges B'chutzlos. Mashmoy said the Rambam is all of Chutzlorets. But the Shach says that it doesn't mean all of Chutzlorets, it only means the parts of Chutzlorets which are Smuchas L'Eretz Yisrael. Like we learned in the Gei Hilchas Trumas U'Maisis, which parts of Chutzlorets have Chiyuvim of Trumas U'Maisis Midrabon. And v'yiroli shehu adin not only b'negeya peya, but hu adin l'shar Matnos Aniyim elu shekula neges b'chutz l'eretz midivrei. So not only b'negeya peya, the Gemara says peya neges b'chutz l'eretz midivrei. And the Rambam is saying that yiroli that lav dafke peya, but all Matnos Aniyim. Kama hu shira peya. How much do you have to give for peya? Is minatera ein lo shir. Afilu hiniach shbelis achas is also yotzi dechibas. Avu b'divrayim ein poches me'echad mishishim. You should give at least a 60th. Bein ba'aretz, bein b'chutzlotz. And also meisav al echad mishishim, you add to the 60th lefi gedel asodi, depending how big the field is, and the lefi revo aniyim. Another factor is how many aniyim there are, and a third factor is lefi birchas hazevach. So Nachmal, the minimal share that a person should give for peya is a 60th. But you should be massive, depending on the size of the field, depending on how many aniyim there are, and also lefi birchas hazera. Ketzat, soda she'iktana b'yeser, she'miniach mimena echad mishishim, is ein male ani is very minimal, is that it is a massive ala share. So over here, lefi gedel hasoda means fakir. If it's a small field, you give more than a 60th. V'chein, im hoyu aniyim merubim, if there are many aniyim, is also massive because there's many aniyim. So if you can only leave a 60th, so it'll be very little for the aniyim. The imzor, that's another factor. And then the imzora ma'at and v'osav harbi, there was a special bracha. You planted few, and lepel you had a big bracha. Sharein is barach is massive lefi bracha. V'chol ha-massive alapeya is mesif le'alaschar. The Eibush gives schar if a person is massive alapeya. There's the minimum amount menatera is shbelis achas midrabon and it's echad mishishim. But you could be massive. There's certain reasons to be massive, either because it's a small field, or there's a lot of aniyim, or there was a bracha, a special bracha in the field. There's no maximum amount how much you could give from the peya from the field. You could give a lot more than the minimum amount of share. There's no maximum share to peya.